So welcome to another episode of Beating Alpha. Today we have a very special guest. I'm very excited to have him on. This is episode 76, and the guest is Michael Wayne. So quick information about Michael and what he does. He has a company that's called Detroit Riverside Capital, which is responsible for investing and developing mixed-use and multifamily properties throughout Metro Detroit. His current project, the Jordan 3250 in Auburn Hills, Michigan, is 48-unit mixed-use project with 6,060 square feet of retail space on the first floor. The project is currently under construction and expected to be completed in June of 2021. Detroit Riverside Capital has an active pipeline of over $20 million in potential development, and their goal is to build 1,000 units over the next 5 years. Michael's, a couple of things about him from personal side. He enjoys golfing, hiking, boating, skiing, and as he says, pretty much anything else outdoors. So happy to have you on today on the show, Michael. I think it's going to be a fun show.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to getting into it.
Awesome. So where do we start? I think the start, it should be where it started, right? Because the journey of real estate investing, because by the way you look, you look still young, right? So I'm guessing, it started for you still at the young age. So maybe you can talk about your journey. How did you start it, and how did you discover real estate investing in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're definitely not wrong. I'm 24 years old, so I'm about half the age of most of my peers in the real estate development industry. But so far, that hasn't really played too much of a role, and we've been able to not let that be much of a factor. But to kind of rewind a little bit, the start of my real estate career was really superseded by the start of a career in sort of entrepreneurship in general. Really young age, I started to become interested in doing something entrepreneurial. And I always tell the story that I was working at my dad's office building when I was 12 years old. I was shredding papers for him, making $12 an hour, and it wasn't cutting it for me. I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be a way that I can do something else to make more money, because if I just sit here and trade my time for dollars, I'm not going to, get to where I want to be. And I'm sitting there at 12 years old thinking this. So I knew from a young age I was sort of doomed and was not going to be able to stick around in the corporate world or work a quote unquote normal office job for too long, because I was just so bored of that. So from early on, I started a lawn care company, mowed my neighbors' lawns, and grew that into 50 accounts over the next 5 years, bought a truck, hired employees, hired my sister and her friends to do some gardening and landscaping work. And really that was kind of the genesis of my passion for entrepreneurship, if you will. Not so dissimilar from a lot of other entrepreneurs. Most people I talked to that had some kind of early stage business, it was some sort of landscaping, lawn mowing type of thing. So I think that's a really good place to start in terms of entrepreneurship. And then I led that into a couple of other businesses. I did like a healthy vending business where we'd take, all natural and organic products, put them in a vending machine, put them in health conscious workspaces like office buildings or hospitals or, gyms, and would sell these health snacks to customers. Rolled into like a photography business in college, and then ultimately graduated college and ended up starting the real estate business. But I guess I just summarized all that because it wasn't just the real estate business that kind of got me started in entrepreneurship. I had a bit of a history and a little bit of an obsession with doing things entrepreneurially, and I'd annoy my friends and family when I'd be pitching a new business idea every 5 minutes. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's really sort of in my blood. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, and I'm super passionate about this stuff. Whether it's real estate or any other type of business, it's kind of like foundational to who I am. So that definitely helped push me in the direction of starting this company. But to be more specific about DRC and kind of how we got started, the story goes that I'd graduated college in May of 2018, and I was working at a accounting firm or consulting firm in Chicago by the name of Grant Thornton. And I was doing some transaction advisory work for them where we'd help corporate clients through the process of merger and acquisition, through due diligence and performance improvement and some restructuring work. was kind of the suite of services that we offered. And so, I enjoyed the job. I enjoyed the people I worked with, but I knew I wasn't long for a career in the consulting industry. So while I was working there, I had a friend of mine who's now my co-founder. His name's Alec. And we were constantly in communication saying that we knew we wanted to do something together. We knew that we weren't going to last too long in corporate America. And so we started looking at different options in terms of, a different business to start. We came across real estate for kind of two or three key reasons. The first is that real estate is one of the oldest industries that exists. Since the beginning of time, people have been owning land and renting land and selling land and profiting from land. And if you look at wealth creation, at least in the United States, there's been more millionaires created through real estate than any other category of corporations in the country. And so we kind of saw that this was a industry with a lot of longevity. It had a lot of success in its history, and a lot of people had made a lot of money from it. So we liked that aspect. It wasn't new. It wasn't niche-y. It was tried and true. We also, specifically within the real estate industry, targeted the multifamily sector, the multifamily asset class, because multifamily tends to be one of the most recession resistant asset classes. That's because sort of the inherent nature of multifamily is that it provides people a basic human need, and that is shelter. And as we've seen, shelter's needed in good times and in bad times. So multifamily tends to do well through recessionary periods, and that's holding true right now through the COVID pandemic, as compared to some other asset classes like office and retail. So we like that aspect of it. And then lastly, it's really scalable. Real estate is a repeatable model, and it's a model that the amount of work doesn't necessarily increase with the size of the deal, if that makes sense. So if I can do a 48 unit development, I can do a 200 unit development with, not 4 times the amount of work, but maybe 2 times the amount of work. So you get exponentially more results the bigger you get with a proportionately less amount of work or expertise. So it's super, super scalable when it comes to growing the size of the projects that you're working on. So this has been a super long explanation as far as how I got started, but I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the whole process, where it all started, and how it kind of grew and morphed into basically a real estate company. And so today, Alec and I have our first development underway, and we're actively seeking new developments now. And we have a goal of kind of growing into one of the largest and most respected real estate development firms in Michigan, and then eventually the Midwest and across the country.
That's awesome. And still being at a young age, as you said, and it's not a problem for you guys and the people that you're working with, because you're proving them that you can do the business, not only can do the business, but thrive in it during difficult times like these. But the fun thing that you mentioned, and we talked about the American thing before, as you said, all the time when you talk with your friends, they kind of had similar business beginnings, as like taking care of the lawns, but all the people that are watching this episode from Europe or different parts of the world is like, it's not that common here, because again, that's coming back to the American thing, but it is pretty cool. So what I would like to ask you, because you mentioned you did all these different things, from lawn care to photography to moved into the real estate construction. Again, for the young audience who's watching, maybe you can kind of give your advice or explain a little bit more in detail. How do you move from one project to a different, which is completely different project? Like, when do you make those decisions? It's time to move to another project.
There isn't necessarily one answer that I can say that's like, when this happens, move to the next project. It's more so about how you feel about the business and the trajectory that you see the business moving in, and whether or not you like that and want to be around that. And so in the example of the lawn care business to the healthy vending business, I was dealing with an issue where I couldn't find good quality labor. I'm young now, but I was much younger then. And I had guys twice my age working for me that didn't necessarily care whether or not I was upset that they were an hour late or they didn't show up, or, they really had zero loyalty, and it was really tough to find people who were willing to work for close to minimum wage to operate your lawn care business on the labor side for you. And so it had grown to the point where I couldn't do all the work myself. So I needed these outside employees, but I couldn't find the good enough outside employees to keep the quality of the business and the level of service where we needed it to be. And so I saw that as kind of a fundamental issue with the business, and that wasn't something I was going to be able to fix very easily. So I decided it was time to cash in the chips and work on transitioning into a different type of company. And so if you look at the parallel between the lawn care business and the vending business, I went from a business that needed a lot of employees to go out and cut lawns to a business that actually didn't need any employees. And no matter what happened, that vending machine was going to sit there and sell candy bars, or I guess in our case, they were healthy bar, healthy treats, all day long, every day, never complain, never ask for vacation time, never call in sick. So I saw a business that had a lot of labor, and I traded it for a business that had almost no labor. And so that was just basically born out of a desire to get to a less labor intensive business. Right. And then, so when I decided to move on from that business, I was basically going off to college, knew I wasn't going to manage it from 5 hours away down in Bloomington, where I was going to school. So that one was kind of born out of necessity as well. I just decided it was time to cash in on that. And then the photography company I ran during school, it was really centered around school activities. I was in, I'm not sure how familiar Europeans are with Greek life, but with fraternities and sororities, but I was in a fraternity, and a lot of our customers were within the fraternity and sorority world. So it wasn't really a business I could bring outside of college. And so that one I decided to leave behind and passed it down to a younger guy in my fraternity. And I think he's still working on it today. And so I guess the point of sharing all that is there's never really one right time to kind of move on. It's more so about your circumstances and where you see yourself in the life cycle of that business. If you think there's still a lot of growth potential and you like what you're doing and you're passionate about it and hungry to keep moving in that business, stick around, run with it. If you're getting tiresome of what you're doing day to day and don't see a ton of growth opportunity and don't really see that next step, then that's when I think it's time to cash in the chips and move on.
Great advice. What else can I say? Great advice. So can you just talk about a little bit about hiring people, because you're mentioning, employees a couple of times. So, and again, you have now, more than a little bit of experience of, kind of evaluating if the person is, fitted for the company or for the project. Like, do you have, some ground rules when you hire people? Like, how do you approach those situations?
Yeah. So I think in the lawn mowing business specifically, and, this is 10-ish years ago now, but in that business specifically, it was kind of slim pickings in terms of who was willing to come and mow lawns all day and work for $12 an hour. So there wasn't a whole lot of variability in who I could hire. Everyone was in a pretty similar story. They were either home from college and just wanted, quick summer work that's low stress and, easy to show up and collect money and pays in cash. Or they were, just to be honest about it, they were like, in some cases had a record, they couldn't get other jobs other places. So that was, in that case, I didn't have as much of a choice. But now, like today, when we hire people, we're hiring companies, because basically what a developer does is you're like the movie producer of building the project. Like you don't design it. You don't actually do the construction. You don't lend the money. You don't manage the property. You don't do any of the legal work. You hire all of those positions to, bona fide professionals who have done this 10 and 20 times. And really the developer is the only one that has the ability to do something like this as his first one. Like, we never would have hired a general contractor to build a 50,000 square foot building if they had never done it before. We never would have hired a property manager if they weren't already managing 20,000 units. So we never would have hired the architect if they'd never designed a building like this. But the developer gets to basically bring all those people together. And because they're the ones raising the capital, they control the project. And, in hiring those people, we have to basically look out for the interests of the project. So we look for number one, experience, kind of like I'm just exampled there. And then number two, I would say, you work with these people day to day. Like if there's a discomfort level with communicating with these people, or you have trouble seeing eye to eye on the vision of the project, it's going to be really hard to work together. And I'd recommend not hiring them. So that's something I look for as well, is just kind of the fit of their team with our team or with us. And lastly, like reputation is super important, especially in the development industry. What have they done in the past? What kind of reputation do they carry around? Because there's normally some semblance of truth within someone's reputation, especially in an industry as localized and close-knit as real estate is. So we kind of look at all of those things and make sure that it jives with what we need out of them or what we're looking for. And that tends to help us find the right partners. And so far we haven't had any issues. We've started with the same partners that we're still working with today on new projects. And I think it's one of our keys to success is that core team and how they're able to come together and work together to make these projects happen.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Love it. So talking about, again, Michigan, or maybe that's the way I should say, Michigan, and Detroit in particular. Again, as some people know, like Detroit, maybe not the best market, or Michigan, in general. Like, can you talk about the market itself? Because you're a local from there. You're born and raised in Michigan, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that was the choice. Why did you pick the market? But have you looked at other options, and why did you decide to start the construction business in the home state?
So there's nothing more important in real estate than relationships and the people around you. And so I had a jump start on some of those with some of the people that we already knew that were in the industry in Metro Detroit. We have a third partner and an advisor who is very tied into a lot of the major players in the Metro Detroit area. So that gives you a huge head start. So first and foremost, one of the reasons we're here is just because we're from here. We have relationships here. We know a lot of people here, and that helps us get off the ground a lot quicker than if we went to a completely new market and had to meet all of those people from scratch. So that's kind of the excuse as far as why we're here. And then once we're here, it's kind of like, well, if you really look around, there's a ton of opportunity in Michigan. Like, yeah, sure, it may not be one of the sexy glamour markets like Austin or Nashville or parts of Florida and East and West Coast coastal cities, but it's pretty darn good. And people here rent apartments just like they do other places, and the rents that we're getting are justifiable to the cost that we need to invest to kind of build the project. So I guess the point I'm making is we have no need to go anywhere else. We have opportunity here, we have relationships here, and we have a potent real estate population, or a potent renter population that supports what we want to do, which is build high quality Class A mixed use multifamily projects. Now, with that said, there are obviously markets that present significantly more growth potential over the next 10 years, just in terms of people moving to those cities. Phoenix is one of those, Denver's one of those, Tennessee or Nashville is one of those areas. Charleston, South Carolina is one of those areas. And so there will become a point where we have built out our Southeast Michigan business, and the growth opportunities will lie outside of state lines, but that may not be for a couple of years from now until we kind of establish. But we definitely have the goal to do that, and that's purely in an effort to diversify. You've heard the eggs in one basket analogy. Real estate is kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket. It's just you hold that basket really tightly and make sure that thing doesn't fall. But maybe by going to other markets, it's like having a couple different baskets spread throughout the country, and that helps to diversify at least geographically if you're not going to diversify from a sort of systemic or strategic level of the overall business model.
Yeah.
So we would like to expand to those areas, but again, we just don't have a need to right now. And we have the relationships we need in this market to really propel us forward.
Yeah. And talking about relationships and, local people inside into the markets, is some of the family members involved into the business also, or one of the partners? Is it your father? Or I'm going to be mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a fairly decent soiree of family members that are involved in the process now. My dad was the sort of third partner and advisor that I was alluding to. My mom is our lead designer, so she handles all finished decisions. And right now, she's picking light fixtures and plumbing fixtures, and she just selected the brick color last week. And that's something that she's just naturally gifted at, and so it kind of made sense to bring her in. She hadn't really done it professionally before this project, but she'd done it enough times between a couple of ventures her and my dad were in. They'd built a couple houses together, so she had some experience and is super passionate about design. So it made sense to bring her in for that, and she's done an extraordinary job so far. And then my older sister owns a marketing company and a digital marketing and brand management company, and so she's done all of our website design and our logo design, and she'll help us to market the property.
Mm-hmm.
So the co-founders are Alec and myself, but my family's really kind of insulated us in terms of their core competencies, and that's been fun so far to have them involved in all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it's fun, working with the people that you know the best. But
Mm.
I think those people deserve at least a place on a website. Come on,
Yeah.
Michael. Yeah, but
All right, fair enough.
can you talk about your experience? And again, because there's a lot of people, maybe a few that you came across, and they tell you all these stories. Oh, never work with your family, because, oh, like, I need a day off, or can you give me a raise? Like, all those situations that are, you know, like, it gives you that taste. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to hire my sister or my brother, or I don't want to my dad get involved into the business because he's going to be pointing fingers and saying, oh, go do this and go do that. So, like, what is your overall experience working? Like, have you came across some problems while working with the family? And maybe you can talk about the benefits also.
Yeah. So starting with the benefits, because it has been a very positive experience. It's fantastic. There's no one that I'd trust more. There's no one that I would rather interact with than my family. And so I love that aspect of it. I can be out to lunch with my mom talking about some family stuff, and then we talk about some business stuff. And it's just, first of all, it's convenient. Second of all, it bolsters our relationship sort of on a personal level, the fact that we also have this business relationship as well. But I think what's the key to family business relationships is they're your family member first, right? My mom is my mom first, and she's always going to be my mom first before she's my lead designer or before she's a coworker. Same with my dad, same with my sister. So as long as you maintain that respect level of family first, work second, and it's easy to say, but it's really important to kind of do in practice. And one of the ways we do that is we don't talk about work at dinner. So we have a rule at the dinner table: no business talk, because otherwise the entire dinner would be business talk, and then bled into the rest of the day. The whole day we'd be talking about business. So it's really important to draw those lines and keep that family first mentality going at certain points like that. And we're really good about that. I think where a lot of people struggle is they let those two lines blend too much, and family time becomes work time. And then there's never an escape from work. Basically, you bring your work home with you because your family members are a part of that. So we really try to delineate that by having times that are sort of off limits to work conversations, and that really helps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are drawbacks in a sense. Like, I would never sort of, if my mom or sister or my dad sort of like messed something up, or in my opinion, or didn't deliver on something, I would have a harder time sort of expressing my frustration and sort of reprimanding than I would if it was someone who I just simply hired to do the job. Like there's a lot more empathy for my family members than there would be for someone who's purely there to kind of do the work. And so I guess that's a drawback, is you can't really necessarily expect the same type of relationship that you'd have with someone that you just purely hired. But that's not a huge inhibitor. And like I said, we have a really great working relationship amongst the family. So, I love it. I'd recommend it. But again, to anyone that's going to do it, keep in mind that family first mentality and know that that's always got to sit above the business relationship, or else the whole thing will crumble.
Great advice. Again, and you just make it, as an example that it's doable, I mean, your example, you continuing successfully build the projects that you're working on currently. And I mean, you do that successfully, with all your family members involved. And, I mean, it's possible, even though a lot of people say it's not, but I mean, in some cases, it depends on a family relationship, a lot of variables. But talking about the project that you have currently, the Jordan 3250, and again, beautiful project. So design house made a great looking project. So shout out to those people. Can you talk about the project? Why have you picked this particular location, and where you are in the process with building it?
Sure. So this project came about right at the beginning. Excuse me. Right at the beginning of sort of us deciding real estate was going to be our thing, starting to look for deals, and we got in touch with a broker who had an agreement to find some equity for this project. And so initially, when we first came to take a look at it, it really kind of speaks for itself, right? When you see the property, it's right on a main corner, two of the main corners in a downtown area, and it's the last corner of undeveloped land in this sort of growing new downtown market. So we really like that aspect of it, that this thing is smack dab in the center of a place that is across the street from a park, down the road from a pizza restaurant, next to a wine bar. It's not tucked away behind or tucked next to some houses, off in a neighborhood. It's very much in a sort of urban area, even though it's just a suburban downtown. And so that's actually become sort of a fundamental strategy or niche of DRC, is that we look for projects that are in these suburban downtown areas, because we think that's highly demanded from millennials, and also from sort of baby boomer downsizers, which I'm not sure if that term makes sense to people from Europe, but basically just anyways, older people who want to downsize from their single family houses and move into maintenance free apartments. So it fit kind of that narrative, where we're going to be in this downtown area, and it's also in a really good market, just in terms of kind of key market metrics. So when you look at the vacancy of Auburn Hills, currently at about 2.4%. National average is over 5%, and the Michigan market specifically, that's one of the lowest vacancies there is in the entire state. So that's a key number that we look at. Another key number is the average rent. It's right around $1,200 in this market, and so that's super important for us. That we really can't build a project profitably with rents, average rents much lower than that. So that's a key metric. Average income, 5-mile radius population, like those are all additional metrics that we look at. But then some of the qualitative stuff is like, okay, what other employers, or like what key employers are in this area? Like, what is our main customer archetype, if you will? Like, who do we envision is going to live here? In the case of Auburn Hills, there's an enormous corporate population. That's kind of what grew Auburn Hills, and that's what made the city what it is today, is this enormous population of corporations. One of the biggest would be Fiat Chrysler. Their headquarters is in Auburn Hills, and it's like 3 miles away from this project. So, we could probably fill the building solely by going to Chrysler's HR department and saying, hey, we got a brand new building, let us into your employment base and let us market to your employees, and they can lease up this whole place. Amazon is putting a $250 million distribution fulfillment center about 2 miles away from this project. There's a company by the name of United Wholesale Mortgage that's 4 or 5 miles away from this project, and they're growing faster and faster every day, it seems. So that's sort of the qualitative stuff that we look at, is what major employers are in this area, and who's going to help drive the growth of this market and ultimately the lease up of this project. And it was very clear that there was a lot of big players around that were going to help us do that. So quantitatively, things look good. Qualitatively, things look good. The metrics of the actual project itself, in terms of, its design, its cost per square foot, its rental rate, the purchase price that we needed to pay to actually get the land, like all of that stuff made sense. So really it's a huge due diligence process to confirm and understand everything I just talked about. And then once you get to that level, it's just a matter of raising the capital, closing on the deal, and beginning the project. And so today we're about 4 months into construction. We have all of our foundation work done. We have all the site utilities in. We have a lot of the masonry block built on the first floor. And we just yesterday finalized the truss design to start building the second floor and building up from there with panelized wood. So it'll take us another, 8-ish months to finish this thing. So we should be done by June of 2021. And by that time, hopefully we'll have a one or more other projects also off the ground or have construction begun.
Awesome. Again, very, very beautiful looking property. I love these type of, deals. They look very, very fancy, very new age. But the question is, why did you decide to go with mixed use projects instead of maybe going for a 70 unit deal? Is those type of mixed use where you have basically commercial units in the first floor? Is that something that people are familiar in the neighborhood, or you just decided to go with this because for your own personal reasons?
So mixed use fits this market in the sense that it's already sort of a downtown area. So there's already a lot of retail on these main roads that the project is built on. So it's really more that it just fits the market, and that the city basically required that we have it be mixed use. We weren't around at the very early parts of the entitlement process because a lot of that was handled by the seller that we ended up buying the project from. But I had to guess, I would assume that there was no consideration from the city of having it be purely a multifamily. They were going to want some form of mixed use with retail or office space incorporated into the design in order to allow the apartments down there. So I think it kind of formed itself. But if I'm talking about the benefits of mixed use and why that's better than just multifamily, I would say some things like the revenue diversity is good. So yes, we have, in this case, we have 48 to, in the 2 bedrooms, say 60 people who are paying us money every month, right? So if I lose 5 of those people, it hurts me less than if I just had 4 retail tenants in the space and I lose 1 of those people. I just lost a quarter of my revenue when that happens. But when I lose 5 people over an almost 50 unit building, that's, maybe 10% of the overall project. And that's much more, you can stomach that a lot easier. So the revenue diversity of the mixed use is key because, I've got retail tenants, I've got residential tenants, and you mix that all together and put it into one project, and it lends itself to a lot of stability and security. There's a little bit of issue when you go to refinance something like that, depending on the strength of the retail tenants and whether or not the lender will give you kind of full credit on that revenue. So that's something to be wary of. But in my opinion, having a mixed use project is one of the most safe asset classes or types of buildings because of that reason. You have a number of different uses in the building, all of which have different reasons that they're there, and all of which are paying you monthly rent. So that's why we really like mixed use, but we're not beholden to it. We have another project going on right now that we're about to propose to city council. And in that case, there won't be any retail, and it is in a downtown. But in that case, we just felt like the retail didn't fit the particular piece of land, and it was sort of on more of a residential side of the downtown. So long-winded way of saying that it's a flexible, dynamic process, and you just have to fit the design to what the city is really demanding.
Yeah, and again, from a tenant perspective, I guess it's convenient to have some. I don't know what type of tenants you're gonna have, but it might be some coffee shop, or a small shop, or for food, or so that's convenient again for the people who are gonna live in a building. And the second thing I think, is having those commercial tenants in, which again is going to give you solid future projections because they're signing long-term lease, right? So that is going to be kind of, makes you feel a little bit more comfortable if the vacancy drops in the property. But it's 48 units. So maybe, again, I'm sure you have a great management team on board, which is going to help you to keep the occupancy as high as possible. So talking about your future potential deals, as I'm looking at it right now, $20 million in active pipeline development. So maybe you can talk about the deal that you mentioned is going to be fully multifamily. So what type of project is that going to be? How big is that? And when do you think you're going to start building this up?
Yeah, so that project would be at its current design, and it's in the site plan approval phase. So as anyone in development would understand, it's a very flexible phase for the project, and the building can change very quickly as you're going through site plan approval. But as it sits today, that would be a 65 unit, 75,000 square feet, located on a corner of two main roads in a downtown area with no mixed use. It would purely be multifamily, and again, that's because the corner doesn't necessarily call for retail. The retail population is already built out. There's really no more room for another restaurant in this market. There's already a coffee shop. There's already a grocery store. It sort of has all of its fundamental needs from a retail perspective, whereas Auburn Hills is very much not that way. It needs a lot of restaurants and another grocery store and an actual coffee shop. It doesn't have any of those things. This market already has all those things. So in our opinion, it would have been harder to lease. It's more residential area. We would have had to do some work with the city to build like pedestrian crosswalks and accommodate the parking for retail. And there was just no way any of that was going to work. So as it sits right now, it's a 65 unit, 75,000 square feet, purely multifamily single use building. And the sort of timeline on it is we're working with the city's third-party planning commission advisors right now. We actually have a meeting with them today to share this latest design. And then assuming that they are in support of it, then we will hold a meeting with the community where we'll share the project with them and get some feedback from community members. And it's a requirement of the PUD process anyways. So we'll get that taken care of. Then we will have sort of an informal meeting with planning commission. So today's meetings with their council or their advisors, but then we'll have an actual meeting with the planning commission before they go to vote on the project itself. And then after that, we'll have the actual voting meeting with city council or with the planning commission and then city council to get the project approved. And then once it's approved, then we can raise our capital through debt and equity and work with our general contractor to finalize the construction costs for the project, and then work with our architect to actually vet and formalize the design of the project. So if all of that can go smoothly over the next 4 to 6 months, then we could be breaking ground come springtime.
Awesome. Again, 1,000 units and over 5 next year. So that's a big goal to have set up for yourself. And again, I think that's what makes you excited to get up in the morning and look forward to, because that's a good solid number. And you talked about, again, as I mentioned, raising capital. So that's a form of equity and debt. So are you going to be taking on, or are you going to be taking on like investors' capital as well for people to invest with you alongside in those deals?
Yeah, so that's how we financed the Auburn Hills deal, was through third-party investment, through limited partners as they're known as.
So
And that's what
you structure it as a syndication, right?
correct, exactly. So it's a syndication for development. They have their ownership stake. That's just pro rata to their investment into the deal, and whatever percentage of the overall equity that their investment represents equals their ownership in the project. And so it's, without getting too nitty gritty on the syndication stuff, that's basically our strategy for future deals, and how we will finance them is through syndication. Eventually, once we, establish enough personal capital or capital through DRC to self-finance the deals, I mean, that's what everyone dreams of. That's what everyone wants to do. So at some point we'd like to get there, but we know that having limited partners right now is really the only way to get these done. And it also diversifies the risk by having other capital involved in the project as opposed to self-financing. So there's kind of two schools of thought there, in terms of some people would rather have all the upside but have all the risk, and other people would rather have a piece of the upside and spread out the upside among other investors, and as well comes the risk amongst other investors. So I would say our strategy in the near term to get to 1,000 units over the next 5 years is purely syndication. After that time frame, we'll probably start to incorporate our own capital into deals and structure things a little bit differently. But in the short term, it's definitely equity investors, limited partners, through high net worth individuals. And then on the debt side, it's regional banks that are interested in owning pieces of commercial real estate.
Yeah. Awesome. Again, great information provided today. I really appreciate you sharing those pieces. Again, it's very exciting. Like, I got excited by just listening to you and the projects that you're going to be developing, in the future, which is awesome. Again, because for a lot of people, building construction, like building buildings sounds risky, for some people. They just go and buy existing deals. So again, but you have an experience, in the field, and again, working with the, family of yours. I'm sure your father has a lot of experience in the field. And again, the market, you're born and raised in it. So, the ins and outs. And so that's pretty awesome. And that's excited. So, talking about yourself, if there's people, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of those who want to get in contact with you, maybe about future upcoming deals, or just to, friend you on Facebook or Instagram, like, what platforms do you have and where people should go and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my main social platforms would be Instagram and LinkedIn. My Instagram, I'm sure you can link it in the show notes or whatever, but it's just at Mike Wayne, MIKEE_Wayne is the Instagram. And then my LinkedIn's like LinkedIn-Michael A. Wayne or something like that. But just find the links, click on those, DM me, shoot me a message. Love to connect with anyone. And it's actually funny. I mean, admittedly, the reason why people in the real estate industry love doing podcasts is because it does foster so many good connections. And through just a couple of other podcasts I've been on, I've met tons of people that have ended up either, working with or looking at deals together with. So I'd very much encourage anyone that wants to get in touch to reach out, because it's a very real way that we connect with people, and I welcome anyone that's interested in connecting with me to do so. On the email side, it's just Michael, first name, .Wayne @DetroitRiversideCapital.com. Shoot me an email, shoot me a message, whatever you'd like. Love to get in touch with anybody.
Awesome. And again, on that note, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, just one thing I'm going to ask you, as always, just to share and pass along this message. If you think this content was valuable, which I think it was, I know I took a lot of great insights from, Detroit, Michigan market that I never knew before. So again, it's pretty awesome content. So make sure to pass it along to the friend, and just to show that it's, possible to do construction still, because I came across a lot of people that say, it's too difficult. So here you go. There's people who are doing it and doing it with a family and doing that successfully, and planning to do even more 1,000 units in the next 5 years. So again, guys, I appreciate you watching the show. Michael, it's been a pleasure to get to know you. Hopefully we can connect sometimes in the future as well. And guys, as always, I'm going to see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.
Hey, thanks.